Well, welcome, guys. And first of all, since I shared my little story when Apple really shook our business off, I'd like, Jay, what was your perspective at that time? You were reporting about Metaio a lot at that time, right?
Yeah, and I first heard about Metaio in 2009 when they sent me this little old Nokia phone with this game on it that they created called Zombie Shooter, with the pirate AR Zombie Shooter, and it was a game, an AR game where these zombies walked around and you would shoot them. So I'm sitting there in the public library where I live, shooting zombies, and that was the first time I'd seen their technology, and I thought it was pretty cool. And as time evolved, I'd watched them for many years and watched Junaio and all of the different tools they created. They made their own platform for making magazines become able to spawn augmented content. But when they suddenly went offline, I'll tell you something. You guys, I've never told anyone. I kind of knew what was going on, and I kind of got a not really a tip, but I suspected it, and I didn't report on that. And I'll tell you honestly, as a fan of that startup and their technology, probably not the best journalistic move I ever made, because it did become a big story. But I didn't want. I was passionate about their technology, honestly, and I didn't want to cause any waves. And I kind of let that one go. I let that one get away. But I knew it was going to be covered anyway. And so, honestly, when I was reporting a lot on AR over the last 5 years, I found them to be what I considered one of the leaders. And so now Apple made a smart move in acquiring an industry leader, I think. So I've watched them a long time. They made a good choice.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you guys think? Is it going to be beneficial or harmful to the AR industry that Apple now steps into the game?
I actually think it's going to be very useful. Who remembers 2008 when the App Store launched? Apps like iFart, iBeer, Make Me Rich, very silly apps, but they were some of the first few apps to go into the store. And what's really cool about it is Apple had a huge following behind it. So these cheesy apps are being published, and they're being downloaded by the millions, right? Except for the Make Me Rich app. So a few people actually did buy that, though, early on. But Apple has the ability to push a message out to the general population. And then from there, it flows up to the marketing agencies and to the brands and to those entrepreneurs that want to take a risk and jump into a new type of way to communicate with all of us. Back then, it was transitioning from .mobi extension mobile websites into mobile apps. So where I see it personally as a company that's been working in the AR space since 2011 is we're going to see some really kind of gimmicky, fun apps for the first few months. I truly believe once the iOS 11 drops this fall on the new i8 phone, now with the Apple A10 processor, you're going to see really rich experiences on there. And I think we, the consumers and the developers, are still going to try to fumble around a little bit to find out what the good use cases are out there. And I really suspect maybe about a half year in after iOS 11 drops on the new i8 phone, we're going to start to see meaningful apps, right? Like Facebook and Instagram definitely didn't go full native in 2008, right? Instagram didn't even really exist back then, yet they dominate the app stores today. So I truly believe with enough time, and Apple stays persistent with pushing the old Metaio code forward and opening up new services and making it easy for developers to come in, the use cases will eventually flow into those that can code. And then we'll start to see those experiences through the apps that all of us in this room are going to see. Yeah. So it'll be a bit of a learning process. I think it's going to be a lot of fun along the way, but it's going to be just like the early days of the App Store. We're going to see those types of apps before we see the meaningful ones really catch hold and stay held.
Yeah, where we're at, sorry, can you describe what Candy Lab does, and how you set up your infrastructure and you take infrastructure to prevent yourselves from those disruptions?
Oh, we're actually very glad for the Apple AR Kit, right? I mean, it's better frameworks for companies like us that have built a 9-axis sensor fusion engine that deploys AR content to GPS locations and beacon locations. Built our own APIs and a real-time delivery system, and we've been really having to do the best we can with the limitations, not so much of the sensors of the device, but with the processor and the memory and what the phones are able to do. If you guys get a chance and go online, we've been publishing location-based AR apps, since the iPhone 4 was out. And back then, we really had to beg the agencies and the brands to allow us to bring AR into their campaigns. And we were told, no one's going to walk around and hold their phone up like this. They're going to trip over sidewalks. They're going to walk into cars. They're going to all of this stuff. So, second part was when they launch a campaign, it has to work on everybody's phones, which includes Android devices as well. So back then in 2012, St. Louis, actually, SDL250 was our first iOS and Android app that we launched in the city of St. Louis, Missouri, which guided people to 250 site locations and collected these cakes in augmented reality. Taught them about the cake, gave them an offer to a nearby business. And it was really during that time we realized we have to give the money back to the customer if it doesn't work on all of the Android devices out there and work on all of the iOS devices. At the time, it was the 4 and the 5. So we figured out a way to kind of smooth out the engine, dumb it down a little bit so it could work for everyone. And that's when we really started to notice more interest for our company to kind of come up through the ranks by kind of smoothing it out for both of those platforms. But now with the Apple AR Kit, we can really put our foot down on the gas pedal, for the iOS devices. Kind of unfair for those with Android, but companies like ours, more like a middle market type of a company with a very specific type of a technology process, are able to really thrive in these new frameworks because we can add new features in that Metaio, may not have allowed folks like us to use in the past. Now Apple is going to allow us to have access to that. And because we have a very specific use case, and companies like ours, I'm not the only one, there's a few of us, that have been specifically working on a very specific use case, can look at what features that we know we can make our own engines better, make our own value adds better, and then we can kind of push forward for that, opening it up to the agency so that they won't have to wait the 4 to 6 months for the developers to really kind of get an idea on what the good use cases are, and not a shot at developers because the consumers, we build for you guys. And if we really don't know what you want yet, we have to really make our best guesses. Your last panelist was talking about being really frustrated with technology. Well, and then I heard another panelist say, well, it's a two-way street. Well, it's going to be the same way here with this AR stuff. But there's enough there's enough available in the AR kit now where a novice developer can really start to learn and make those meaningful apps. Like I said, it's just going to take a few months.
Thanks.
I want to say that I was a fan of the iFart app, so I didn't want to hear you badmouth it too much.
Thank you, TechCrunch.
So I think many people agree that it will add value once Apple goes into AR fully. If not for their own ecosystem, then for the other parts of the ecosystem, where companies like Magic Leap, for example, who've been in stealth mode forever, and they haven't released the product yet, and they're still evaluated in the billions.
Yeah.
So those kind of companies will be driven to finally make their move. When Apple pushes that. So that is definitely helpful for the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about the ecosystem from your point of view right now in AR and what the activities are from OEM side?
So it's probably my personal opinion. NVIDIA as a company is more invested in virtual reality, but we see virtual reality as kind of the next computing platform. And when you think about applications in augmented reality, then the step isn't that far away. So that you get to use the same pipelines, for example. You have the same kind of render processes that you can use both in virtual reality and in augmented reality. So whoever comes up with a good solution, they're gonna need processing power. And NVIDIA as a company provides that, even though we haven't any products announced in augmented reality at the moment, we're still taking a look at all the interesting things that are happening in Europe and on the other side of the pond.
Yeah. So was that the personal opinion, or was it the NVIDIA statement?
That was NVIDIA's standpoint. My personal opinion is augmented reality is going to be an even more pervasive technology than virtual reality. I mean, virtual reality allows you to go on a field trip, to take a look at whatever the ruins of Machu Picchu, or just take a step out of your normal world. Whereas augmented reality, and I think everybody knows this, is it just enhances your life, and in essence, it should help make your life more comfortable. So I think once we get sleek devices, it's going to be. Actually, I think it's going to be even more pervasive than smartphones. Yeah.
What do you think are going to be compelling use cases for AR?
Well, my favorite use case is always a GPS system, where if I'm traveling to another country, so whatever, I'm in Lithuania, for example, and I walk around, and instead of doing this on my phone, I can just roam around freely, and the way that I have to take is just being displayed on the floor, and essentially it frees you from that smartphone move, where you can have it just at a glance, in a literal sense.
What's your favorite head-mounted display right now for AR, currently on the market?
I definitely like the ODG ergonomics. So they really figured out how to make it sleek and small. Apart from that, from the spec side, I don't think there's like really one standing out and I can't talk about Magic Leap, unfortunately. So
that's fine. When do you guys think spectacles will go AR? Will they go AR?
We certainly can help them go AR.
So what is how's your strategy for when spectacles go AR?
Well, as long as there's a Bluetooth chip in it, the computing power and processing still happens on your mobile phone.
Yeah.
The compass, the gyroscope, things like this, sensors that we can listen for, where the app is truly going to sit, simply shoots information, the vision to the spectacle.
Yeah.
And what you now do by walking around like this, you can simply see through the glasses. So for us, it's more about pairing and allowing the vision to take place here instead of holding the phone up and seeing it here.
Yeah, I still remember when we had Google Glass 4 years ago and we were walking around in Munich and there's like 3 reactions, people who knew it and are really excited about it, people who didn't know it and it was like, thought it was kind of like disabled people device if I have like some seeing impairment, and then the third reaction was just anger, like, are you filming me right now? And now I was in Venice Beach a couple months ago and nobody cares about the spectacles and everybody thinks they're cool and everybody takes videos and it's all fine. So the acceptance is really moving forward. So for Candy Lab, like what's your USP for glasses when they come out?
What's my favorite manufacturer right now?
No, what's your product's USP if head-mounted displays become wide mass spread?
Allow our OpenGL 9-axis sensor fusion engine to pair with it via Bluetooth and still run the same type of processes that we're doing on the phone now. It's just instead of holding your phone up, walking around, seeing location-based AR this way, you simply see it as a visual representation on the headset.
Sure.
Everything for us still remains the same. Marketers are still going to want to drive people to very specific GPS locations, still offer turn-by-turn navigation information that right now we do have to walk around and hold our phone up in front of us, which my colleague here on the panel, I totally agree with you. It's a lot better than walking around looking like this and actually tripping on something. When you hold your phone up, you can at least have a bit of an advantage to see what's in front of you, right? Like a car or a bus.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, spectacles, isn't it funny how, well, and Snap messaged that whole thing like differently, and the reaction is different, right? The privacy concern, they kind of focused on entertainment rather than focusing on utility or something like the Glass did, and it's interesting to me that there might be less privacy concerns from that. So, because when you asked about like favorite head-mounted displays earlier, like one thing I'd been thinking about, while HoloLens has like a super small field of view, one thing I think is interesting about their approach is that it's not something you wear out in public. You don't wear it out in entertainment, like at the beach or whatever. It seems more like it's messaged as a home device or an office, or where you're safe to wear it and not be a nerd. You wear it in a nerdy situation or wherever you're working. And that's really interesting how I think they did kind of a decent job of messaging that, whether they meant to or not. That's kind of the takeaway I took from that. It's in the right place, the experience for the user is in the right place. It's just what I thought. Yeah.
I haven't bought any spectacles yet, but every time I see somebody, I just do this because it's just a very playful way. I think that's what differentiates the spectacles from Google Glass. Google Glass looked super futuristic, and you knew something's up with this glass. Like you said, maybe it was a seeing impairment or something like that, or. Whereas spectacles, if you don't know what they are, you don't really see that it's some kind of piece of technology. I think that's what they really did well, and it's also a very playful kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So you were talking that NVIDIA is really putting the official focus on VR right now. So when Apple continues pushing AR to the masses, and they've said they are with having the iPhone ever, they're the biggest AR platform in the world, right? So do you think having more success and more market penetration in AR is actually going to drive VR investments up or down? Like, what's your opinion there?
That's a very good question. I actually treat augmented reality and virtual reality kind of like an immersive media. So I think in general, if one of those is going to be successful, then the other one's going to be put in the limelight as well. So I would reckon that it's going to drive more investment into the whole space of immersive media in general, or extended reality, as many people are calling it now, so XR.
Yes, yeah. I had that a lot. What do you think, Jay?
Yeah, I think there's probably a halo effect. As people become more comfortable with just the idea of wearing wearable for whichever one of the functions they're trying to use, and they have different focuses of expertise. But yeah, I think I see a halo effect.
Yeah.
I agree with both of you guys, actually. So for us, most of our investments came in about 6 months leading up to the launch of Pokemon Go. And then shortly thereafter, maybe about 90 days after Pokemon Go is when we stopped fundraising because we got enough from that. And every investment meeting that I went into, and that was the same question, where do you see VR? Do we see that as a competitor? Is it something that we should worry about? And I really took, as the CEO of the company and founder, I really had to take that to heart and think about it. And then I started looking around and I thought, man, all of us have mobile phones on us right now. So a good short-term investment, if an investor is wanting to get a return a little sooner than later, it'd be better for them to hedge their bet with a company like ours that truly lives on the mobile device right now. Thankfully, we built an engine that can also live on headsets because of the Bluetooth pairing. But so in that particular case, you could kind of roll over into VR. But every single investment meeting that I went into, every agency, almost every customer meeting I went into, that's the first question. First, what's the difference between VR and AR? And is there an in-between, right? Is there something that can kind of work in between where we can kind of guide people from this experience to VR? Because these marketers want to connect with people on what we already have in our pockets now. And then once these headsets become more readily available, whether it be like ODG's device or what those guys down in Florida are working on, by the time that hits the mass market and we all have them, the investors that put their money into the AR companies more than likely are also going to offer a VR solution as well, because it's still sensor fusion, right? It's just taking place on headset instead of a phone. So I think if you can get in with a company that is going to transition into VR, it's a bit of a safe bet for near term and long term. But for those really savvy investors that are looking to own more of a company and they're willing to wait around, guys, we started in 2011 and we've only just started making real money this past year. That's what, 6 years? We had to literally beg for these campaigns up until now. Now it's much easier for us to do these deals. But for investors wanting to get a bigger chunk of a company that they feel promising in, invest in VR right now. If you want to get your money back a little sooner, maybe look at a local AR company or an AR company that's still fundraising and kind of buddy up with them. It's still risky. There's no guarantees, but that's how I see it as someone that actively fundraised for so many years. It's kind of like, is it this way or that way? Yeah.
Interesting. So not only talk about Apple, but also when we talk about VR, talk about the recent Facebook announcement with VR Spaces that has built-in functionalities that have been covered by a couple startups and basically has disrupted their business model a lot. So what would you recommend a startup that is getting active in AR and maybe VR? And what's your opinion on those large companies monopolizing this space and really trying to own the entire ecosystem by themselves? How do you see that with the market diversity and creativity in the industry, with the community in the industry? We're a great community, right? There's a lot of interesting career paths that we have seen even since last year. And so what would you advise a startup, a young person that is wanting to get in that space after DIGILITY?
First of all, find a place where they can get investments. So most of the time, I still have to recommend to friends that if they're looking for investments, they should look to the US side and also the Asian Asian part.
Why not in Germany?
Because it's tough. For most German investors, it's more about profitability right now than the kind of profitability they could have in the future. So sure, there's companies like Metaio or SMI, which is also another German company that was just bought by Apple. Of course, you can be lucky and find an investor, and then that company gets bought by somebody else. But in the end, what European and German investors are looking for is profitability right from the start. And so I actually have a fear that augmented reality and virtual reality will be another industry that will completely be shaped by US companies. Just like the internet was. There's no big names out there on the internet in terms of world corporations, world-sized corporations. that come from Europe. So I can't name a single one that is actually making a huge impact in the internet space that's coming from Europe. Most of the big ones are all from the US: Facebook, Google, Amazon, those kind of guys.
So who reads TechCrunch in the room? Everybody, right? These guys do a great job at covering all of the accelerators out there. Something that we did early on when it was difficult to go out and fundraise is we put a business plan together, and we went and we pitched countless accelerators through f6s.com. If anyone here, an entrepreneur, and you have the idea, you want to get into VR or AR, I'd recommend just typing in TechCrunch, accelerators, see the last few stories that popped up, maybe look for the top 10, top 15, they do both of them, and set up an f6s.com account, fill the entire profile out like you would your LinkedIn page, and just start applying to them and show them a video of something that you have that could stand up and work, or show them what you plan to do. Because once you go through that 90-day program, you'll get probably 20, 50, 75K, depending upon which one you get into. But you're going to meet a lot of angel investors that fund those programs that'll watch you throughout that course, that 90-day course. And if you show promise and you show that you're going to stick with it, one or two of those angel investors that fund that accelerator, they'll take you out to dinner, they'll have a meeting with you, and they'll maybe do like a 25K once a month for the next 5 to 6 months on the hope that you'll get at least one paying customer, even if it's like 10K or something like this, 10K euro, hoping that you're going to catch, and eventually a bigger company may acquire you or pick you up and offer funding through the form of a sales contract. Then he gets his buddies or her buddies interested, and then it starts to turn into this compile effect. I mean, I have to admit, as someone that's really kind of gone from this from beginning till now, it really, guys, it really did take us 6 years to get sizable, like in the triple-digit numbers, to get those types of investments to roll in. But it was much easier for us to apply to an incubator like Arch Grants. We went through Arch Grants, a 50K non-dilutive grant you can apply for right now out of St. Louis, Missouri. You just have to move there for a year if they select you. They take 20 companies once a year. With the accelerators, thousands of them apply through F6S, but these accelerators, guys, and there's accelerators here in Europe as well, they do a really good job at looking at every single application, and one of them will eventually pick you up. It took me 4 years to get into a GAN, a Global Accelerated Network company accelerator, Blue Startups, out of Oahu, Hawaii, which specializes in travel tourism. I know, right?
Yeah.
But
yeah, tough one.
yeah, tough one. But it gave us credibility, and this is literally, guys, this is like a year before Pokemon even launched. But just from that credibility of going through an accelerator, coming off of an incubator, sticking with it for as long as we did, we didn't really make that much money, maybe a few $100,000 up until that point, but it was enough after Pokemon launched where we kept a good cadence on LinkedIn. We kept a good cadence on social posting, showing that we're trying to solve some problems that don't exist yet. Yeah, we get it. We kind of look silly for a while, but we didn't look so silly after the market was validated. So really my advice is for the entry-level entrepreneurs, say half of the room is interested in VR, start publishing on YouTube what you're working on. If you're scared that someone's going to copy you, well, you probably shouldn't be doing this kind of work anyways. You should probably go work for a startup.
Yeah.
But if you're willing to publish what you have or talk about what you're doing, apply for the accelerators, keep that going. You know, every 3 to 6 months, a new accelerator is going to open up. And if you're willing to move there, they'll work with you, and then they'll get you the financing. They'll help give you unfair advantages with customers, and then just keep at it. And before you know it, you're working with Fortune 500 customers. Maybe TechCrunch one of these days will do a story on us.
Yeah.
Do a story on you as well, and then more people will start to know about the services that you offer, and then it just gets a little bit easier. So it's just really kind of like a learning and a step process. I'm definitely available to help anyone in the room give some of the learning lessons that we went through and a lot of the mistakes that we made when we were trying to apply for funding early on. I'm on LinkedIn pretty much every day, and I'd love to share experiences because really it's all of us kind of coming together in this field that's going to eventually push this big weight over the edge to make the entire paying markets, you know, start to pick the tech, and they're going to want to work with folks like us.
That's awesome. I love that energy. That's great.
I think F6S, I think they, if nothing else, they have just a set of resources. If I wrote, I wrote a story about them once, and they have the card now where it's just very usable wealth of information, whether you go all the way through Accelerator or not. So it's something to. It's a good link to point out.
That's sweet. Well, it sounds like there's no barriers. There's investment money, there's ideas, there's the hardware. Final question to round out the conference is, what are you guys' prediction for September for the announcement? We talked about head-mounted displays a little bit. We talked about the German company they acquired. What do you guys think? What's going to happen with Apple?
Well, so they've acquired basically all the things they kind of need, right, for for a good HMD. They got SMI for eye tracking, and they have Prime Sense and Metaio and for content, and they have kind of all the things they need. But I was thinking about this. I think AR does live on phones for a little while longer, because why would they cannibalize this cash cow they have with a new HMD coming right out? I mean, the post-smartphone era, they have a tricky situation to be in. Like, do we lead and come out with something? Do we cultivate this massive moneymaker? How do we transition from that? And so, reading Gene Munster, a lot, sure, they've got the 2 cameras now, and there will be some more advances. I'm not sure it's an HMD yet. So something, that's what I've been kind of thinking about in my head. So.
Yeah.
So my prediction is that if anything comes out from Apple, it has to be like a super sleek device. Like, they don't want to run into the same problems that Google Glass had with just general acceptance in the mainstream. And so it has to look really, really cool, and it has to be light and thin. And I think it should even be lighter than, for example, the ODG glasses, because they still look like a weird pair of sunglasses, really. And so they do have to come up with a very, very good solution for ergonomics. And I'm not quite sure if we're there yet. If people are willing to put something on their faces that doesn't look really, really cool. So my prediction is that actually it will take a little bit longer. I also agree that AR will live on smartphones for a little while, also to get that acceptance in the general population.
Does NVIDIA make any moves for head-mounted displays? Because I know with Google Glass, the processor was horrible. It got very hot, very fast. We lost a lot of devices when we were running extensive apps on that. So is NVIDIA playing in that game?
In a very Apple-like fashion, I'm saying that we're not talking about unannounced projects.
All right. But, OK.
Can neither confirm nor deny.
I can neither confirm nor deny the existence or non-existence of a project like that.
So yeah, it definitely is a product design and a technical problem. Not only did Google Glass fail because it was not very clunky, or it was clunky, but also because the battery was very, very bad. It was really, the heat is still a problem. Like there's one guy, he's fine with Google Glass over there. So we see that with DHL and logistics companies who use Google Glass, the heat is still a problem. In plants like Mexico, where it's hot anyways, it's just not a nice experience. Yeah. So Andrew, final word. What do you say?
Yeah, so we're actually launching an app with a media company. I would totally tell you right now, straight up, but the lawyers are pretty aggressive when they pay that kind of money. Where we're going to be using one of the features out of the Apple AR kit for those with the i7 and the i8 phones. As you know, you have to have the newest processors really for the AR kit to work. We're going to be using our engine that we've been using since the iPhone 4 to present, so that we don't lose a whole huge amount of the market when we launch for this particular media customer in the US. So we'll be showing how you can leverage one of the specific features in the Apple AR kit with location-based augmented reality. Part of my predictions for the mass market is you're going to see a lot of these brands and agencies that happen to know a development team start to spend a little bit more of the brand money that flows into the agencies to do these kind of 30-day experimental data gathering kind of experiences to get information, kind of have a brand associate its name with a really cool kind of time-sensitive AR app with local developers in their cities. So another great opportunity for those of you that do work with Xcode and are wanting to do something with Apple. Now's a great time to go out and start building these relationships with some of the brands in your city, especially the entrepreneurs looking to go out and build something on your own to go get financing. Now will probably be the best time because Apple, a publicly traded company, just shot the flare up in the air and said, charge towards AR, and these brands, they may not know how to go and build these types of apps. So if you have a little bit of an idea of what you're doing, now's the best time to kind of go get your hands dirty and building some of those experiences and get paid for it along the way. My prediction is more AR apps are going to get paid for, and it's going to help push the adoption for all of us to kind of really start to pick up AR and treat them just like we do everyday apps right now that we get from the App Store. My prediction.
Cool. Thank you very much, guys. Unfortunately, time is over. This was a very fun conversation with you guys. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you.